Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we're back to the 1980s, the top 5s that I'm doing, and we're doing my top 5 favourite horror films from 1985. Now, like I told you before, I'm doing this because one of the channels that I really love, Horror Hands, he did every decade from like the 1920s, 30s upwards to now. Of his favourite horror film of that year. It was very comprehensive. Now mine is not as comprehensive. That I'm only doing the 80s and I'm doing a top 5. I've done 1980 to 81, 82, 83 and 84 so far. So tonight we're looking at 1985, and what an absolute corker of a year. It has two probably of the greatest sort of horror films that came out of the 80s in it, and they're both in my top 5. So it's going to be cool. So we won't waste too much time. We'll get on at number 5, and this one is a little bit of a different one. It's a bit of a sort of monster film similar to The Blob, and it's called The Stuff. Now this is a really cool film. If you've never seen it, there's a little premise. I've done a review on my channel. The little premise of this video is of this film. It's based on human consumerism and how humans are so easily persuaded to buy stuff. And some guys discover this white goo stuff that's underground, and it sort of like puts people into this sort of like hypnotic state when all they want is this stuff, and that's all they can think about. It's all they eat and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, it's like an investigator going around investigating this company and the thing they're selling. I think because these other companies want to know what their secret is. Anyway, and it sort of revolves around that, and we come across quite a few bizarre happenings in the film where this stuff is actually not as clear cut as it seems, and it can in fact does kill some people, and it does turn them into some sort of crazy killers, some of them. So it's a strange film, but quite similar to The Blob, because the way that the stuff sort of moves is very similar. It looks like ice cream, but it looks really nice actually. But yeah, but it's a really cool film, and when it came out, it wasn't like the most successful of horror films. But it was really cool. In the UK, I don't think it got a theatrical release. I think it went straight to the sort of the rental VHS market, because that's when I first saw it. I picked it up as a next rental film years ago, VHS, and I absolutely loved it. Really cool film, amazing. And it's directed by Larry Cohen, who's made some big films, but this one is really cool. And it's quite a political statement in it, to be honest. And that's number 5, and that's The Stuff. Number 4 is from one of the classic franchises of the 80s, and one of the probably most popular franchises of the 80s. It's from Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street, and we're looking at Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which is in this set here. Unfortunately, I don't have the individual box, but it's in my set here, and it's the second film of the series. It's a really cool film. This one is based pretty much straight after the first one, and it's more based around this teenage lad growing up with his adolescence and stuff like that, and of course then Freddy keeps appearing in people's dreams. It's very similar to the first one, but the way the story leads on is really cool, and I really like the first sort of scene of the bus, the school bus at the beginning, when Freddy drives it over the cliff and all this kind of thing. But it's a really cool film, really good, still quite gory, and I really like it. It's I don't think it's a lot of people's favourite, but it's one of mine, because I think the story's a bit stronger than the first one. The first one was really cool, but very obvious, and this one wasn't. It took a little bit of a different turn, and I really liked it. And again, Freddy Krueger is played once again by Robert Englund in that. I think he plays in pretty much all of them, if not all of them. I just think it was the sort of the reboot film that came out he didn't play him in, which I like too. But yeah, this is really, really cool. Really enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. That's my number 4 favourite film of 1985. So we're moving along quite quick. Number 3 is a H.P. Lovecraft film, which again is absolutely fantastic. I can't remember who's directed by this one, but it's H.P. Lovecraft's famous tale of Reanimator, telling us the story of Herbert there. It's a really, really cool film. It's very, very similar to Frankenstein. He's got this notion of regeneration, reanimating life when it's dead, and but whereas Frankenstein, he's sort of built the body up and used electric and stuff like that. This one is like a sort of fluid that he's made up, a liquid that can regenerate life. And again, what he regenerates turns into sort of zombie-like raised killer monsters, and it deals with a conflict with him and his tutor, who succumbs pretty to his death, and sort of succumbs to using the reanimation sort of fluid. And it's really funny because he walks around with like his head off and sort of like carrying it around. It's really, really cool. It's got a real black sense of humour in it. It's more of a sort of black comedy sort of horror, but it's got a ton of gore, and it's a really, really cool story. Yeah, it doesn't really bring too much new to the actual table, like I said, because the story is very similar to Frankenstein, but it's a H.P. Lovecraft story, and it works really well, and it spawned 2 or 3 sequels, like the Bride of Reanimator and Beyond the Reanimator. So it's had a couple of sequels, and it's really, really cool. I really enjoyed the film. So number 3 of my favourite horror films of 1985 is Reanimator. So now we're down to the top 2, and 2 absolute classics, and I think both of these have been in my top 20 favourite horrors of all time. Number 2 is a vampire film starring Chris Sarandon and Roddy McDowall, and it's Fright Night. Again, this is another sort of black comedy horror. It's based upon this young lad who lives in his home with his mum, Brewster, and he believes there's a vampire's moved in next door to him, because there's been some reports of killings in the town, and he's been seeing bodies going into the house, and he's one night catches him in a window, sort of like attacking, killing this sort of woman, sort of like during their sort of sexual encounter. He's watching through the window. Anyway, so he believes it. He tries telling his mum, who doesn't believe it. He tries telling her, his friends, his girlfriend and his friend, who don't believe him too, thinks he's just joking, thinks he watches too much horror movies, because he loves horror movies, and he watches this horror show at night, which is presented by Roddy McDowall. And so he goes to see Roddy McDowall to see if because he's really become that this Roddy McDowall is this vampire hunter. And so he goes to sort of his studio to sort of get him involved, and he doesn't want nothing to do with it. So because he's driving everyone crazy and the police are getting involved and all this, his friends go to see Roddy McDowall. So please just come along and play along with it. Go visit the neighbour's house and stuff like that. So they arrange with the neighbours to go behind his back, to sort of say, it's all fake sort of thing. Anyway, so they go to his house, and Roddy McDowall sees that this is a vampire, because there's no reflection in the mirror and all this kind of thing going on. And so Roddy McDowall starts to believe him, and then that's where the film sort of turns, and it turns into an amazing sort of like horror film where his friends turn into vampires and all sorts of things, and him, Roddy McDowall, trying to save the day because his girlfriend's been sort of like bitten by the vampire and they're trying to turn her back. It's an amazing film, but it's such an 80s feel to it. With if you love things like Stranger Things, that sort of 80s kind of feel with the music and the clothes, and this is the perfect sort of movie because it's just like that. There's nothing more 80s than this film. Absolutely amazing film. So my second favourite horror film of 1985 is Fright Night. Amazing. So number one can only be the legendary film with my legendary story that I told you about on my date at the cinema. It has to be George Romero's Day of the Dead. I've told the story a number of times now that I went on a date to the cinema in 1985 with a future sort of girlfriend, hopefully, and we went to see this. And if you've seen the film, there's a couple of very gory scenes, especially one in the laboratory when the guy that the doctors experiment on stands up and all his guts fall out onto the floor. That was it. I had to go out to the toilet, and I went to the toilet and I was sick. I felt really sick because it was the first time I ever witnessed real gore on the big screen. I've seen gore on the telly, but that's pint size, isn't it, to that? But yeah, anyway, I went back and and the girl was with me goes, "You're all right, mate. You know, you're all right because you look pale." I think, yeah, I just felt a bit queasy. She started laughing, but she ended up being my girlfriend at date, so it was a successful date, and I think this helped me, to be honest. But I loved it. It was an amazing film. Apart from that scene that really made me feel sick, there's other gore that's in the film that once I've seen that, I handled it really well. But the film is fantastic. It is based in the sort of George Romero zombie world, and it's sort of like we're in this sort of, I don't know if it's a Florida, but it looks like a coastline, like Florida area, and the army have set up underground this sort of bunker underground, obviously because above ground the whole sort of world's been now taken over by the zombies, and they're down there below with some scientists, and they help the soldiers help catch the zombies for the scientists to try different experiments, because one of the doctors is trying to sort of not tame them but control them, so that could be a way forward in the world. And then they start to fall out, the scientists and the army, and then we've got that confrontation going on with scenes of zombies in between. You get deaths with soldiers when they're trying to catch the zombies, and then we've got the sort of climatic end when it's like they're trying to escape this underground sort of dwelling and the zombies have overtaken it. And it's a really cool film, amazing film. This I've had a long time. This is the Arrow release of it when they first started doing these sort of window boxes. It's such a cool release. It's got a comic book with it. It's really cool. Sorry guys. It also got multiple sleeve covers and stuff like that. Really cool. It's got posters, it's got booklets, it's got 2 discs. Really cool. Great edition. I used to have the Dawn of the Dead version of this as well, but I got rid of that when I picked up the 4K I think 6 or 7 disc box set of Dawn of the Dead with all the different versions of it in it. But yeah, this is it. This was amazing, and it made me fall in love with zombie films. I mean, I saw Dawn of the Dead way before this because we used to own that on Betamax video, because we got Betamax before VHS, and we owned Dawn of the Dead. It's one of the first films we owned, me and my sister, and we loved it. It was so gory and it was just really cool. And we believed it almost to be real because we were quite young and impressionable, and absolutely loved the film. So Dawn of the Dead was probably my first zombie film I ever saw, but this was the first zombie film I saw in the cinema, and I absolutely fell in love with the film. And now it's just iconic and amazing. It is in fact my favourite zombie film of all time. There's some amazing zombie films out there: Dawn of the Dead, Zombie Flesh Eaters, Zombie Holocaust, loads, Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead. There's hundreds of zombie films, but this one is definitely my favourite. Absolutely fantastic. Burp. Such a cool film. If you've never seen it, it's worth watching. It's really, really cool. It is a little bit of a slow burn because it is quite long for a zombie film. I think it's over 2 hours. It's quite long, but it's a really, really cool film, and the story is really compelling. And you know, you feel for these poor scientists, but these soldiers are so sort of like they're just so under the control of their leader, who's just a nasty, you know. But there we are. Really, really cool film. So my favourite horror film of 1985 is Dawn of the Dead. So there you go. That's my top 5 favourite films of 1985. Number 5, The Stuff. Number 4, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Number 3, Reanimator. Number 2, Fright Night. And number 1, Day of the Dead. Fantastic. What are your top 5 favourite films from 1985? Let me know down below in the comments. It was a really strong year for horror. There's loads of horror films that I've left out that I could have put in here. But you can only do 5 in 5, and I just wanted to pick ones that really meant so much to me, and some films that were a little bit eccentric, like The Stuff. But it's a really, really cool year for the films, and a really, really good one. So we've got to go to 1986 next, so you keep your eyes peeled for that one. I don't know how I'll be doing that, but hopefully not too long. Until then, check out some more horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man View Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell. I'm the Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, and Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And a massive shout out to my lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.